everyone, welcome to episode 37 of Sketch Support. A new Sketch Support means I've got a new free sketch that you can download at Scrapbook Generation, and in this video I'm going to show you 3 layouts that I've made all using that same sketch. This series is all about showing the endless ways you can adapt and customize a sketch to fit your needs. I am always a big cheerleader for using sketches, and for so many reasons. Early on in my scrapbooking life, I realized that I like having a plan whenever I create. Having a visual of what I might create when I sit down to scrapbook just made the whole creative process so much easier. And as I've used sketches more and more, I've grown more confident in my ability to adapt them to different ideas and photos and themes or styles. I always try to stress to people that sketches are not a rule that has to be followed. They are simply a starting point that you can build on with your own creative ideas. And I've got a layout in today's video that is such a good example of how far the creativity can jump away from the sketch. My layout looks nothing like the sketch at all, but the influence was there, and I'll share the thought process of creating that layout and how I went from point A to practically point Z. So each month when I share the new free sketch, I always create a 3-page PDF of bonus sketch options that show over 20 different ways you can adapt the sketch following some common methods that I like to use. It serves as a visual for some interesting ways you can change things up to simplify the design or enhance the design. Also, how to switch up some photos by size or amount or maybe arrangement. There are also options that show how to use the design with only 4 by 6 inch photos. There are 4 2-page options and 1 that shows how to reduce the design to fit on an 8.5 by 11 inch layout. And I have to tell you, the sketch options for this month are some of my all-time favorites. I want to create all on the first page of that PDF. And I'll link to the free sketch and the bonus sketch options down below in the video description. And one last thing I want to mention before we get started, I've got a new class coming up. I'm partnering with Scrapbooking Cards today to teach a 4-week online class, and the focus of the class covers 2 topics: using 6 by 6 inch paper pads and using design concepts to build basically a file of ideas that you can pull from anytime you sit down to create. And maybe if you're struggling with an idea, you have a set of concepts that you can pull from. Of course, there will be lots of sketches and some videos and layout galleries and all that fun stuff that comes with classes. And I'll link to it down below if you are interested and want to go read more about it and possibly register. Okay, now let's get to the fun of this video with a look at the sketch that is going to be the starting point for each layout I'm sharing today. I have been so excited for this sketch after I made it about a month ago. And the idea came from a kind of interesting place. I bowl in a league with my husband and some friends of ours, and there was a Sharpie on our table, and I had a styrofoam cup with some Diet Pepsi in it, and I just kind of started doodling on the cup. And I have a go-to doodle that I do, and I've done it since high school. You just draw a set of 4 or 5 lines going in one direction and then add another set going in a different direction. Mostly I do diagonal lines and just alternate the direction. So I was doing this and the light bulb just like totally flashed on, and I thought, why have I never created anything with this concept on a sketch or a scrapbook layout? And so the next day I got up and sat down at my computer and completed this sketch. So the background has several pieces that are grouped together to create a large square. There is a larger vertical strip on the right, and then there is a diagonal lines pattern that is covering the left side of the square background. And I used really small strips for this design because I love the idea of having a lot of detail over here and balancing it with the large solid strip over here. And if you feel like these strips are too small for you, you can also go up to 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch or 1 inch, whatever your comfort level is. And for the photos, there are two 2.5 by 3.5 inch photos that are clustered together with the title, journaling, and some embellishments. For my first layout, I simplified the design, all due to this hearts pattern paper. I instantly fell in love with that heart detail, and this paper is from Hit Kit Club, and it became the inspiration for how I would use this sketch for this layout design. One of the very first ideas I had for this sketch design was using small shapes in place of the strips, and this paper allowed me to do that in a more simple and approachable way. So I cut the pattern paper into vertical strips and used those in place of the small 1/4 inch angled strips on the sketch. And I want to show you really quickly how I arranged these strips. I found the easiest way was to cut a rectangle of white cardstock to serve as the base for the strips. And that information is included on the full sketch that you can download, so you know what size to cut that base piece. Then I used my ruler and a pencil to draw an angled line across this base piece of cardstock. And the great thing is that you can adjust this angle to your own liking. I just eyeballed mine every time I did it. And then when you add your strips, you start with the top section first and line up the end of the strip with that pencil line. After you have all of your strips on there, you can erase any pencil line that is showing. And then when you adhere that second set of angled strips, you can use the previous strips as your placement guide. And then you just trim off any strips that are hanging over the edges of the base and then adhere the whole thing to your layout. It's a really easy design to create, and when your layout is complete, it won't look like it was easy to create at all. It's really just a fun design concept to play with. So one of the main reasons I wanted to use this paper was that I wanted to stitch on these hearts. I'm almost always looking for interesting ways to add stitching to my layouts, and this heart design was just begging me to stitch on it. The pattern paper as a whole had this kind of subtle color fade from a darker pink to a lighter pink to a peach to a yellow. It's such a beautiful fade of colors, and I kept thinking when I was working with it, it looks just like a sunset. I feel like it would be perfect for sunset photos for sure. I wanted my stitching to follow that same color fade. So I picked out 5 different colors of embroidery floss and tried my best to stitch along with that fade. And the fade is so gradual that sometimes it's hard to find the right transition to the next color, but I feel like it turned out really pretty, and I think I got pretty close to matching that fade. For my vertical strip, I went with a simple ledger style pattern paper. I loved the balance of a busier design on the left paired with the simpler paper on the right. And for my photos, they are a little different than the sketch, but there is a Polaroid style frame that makes them super close to the original size on the sketch. So I didn't have to make any adjustments for that to work. And in reality, you have a lot of space here to go with larger or smaller or add more, whatever you want to do with this design. And really everything else, my title, my journaling strips, and my embellishments follow the sketch very closely. I did try, when picking out my embellishments, to focus on colors that coordinate or match the heart strips with that color fade. So I mostly used orange, pink, and yellow, with a few smaller accent colors like green and blue. And I have to tell you, without the stitching, this layout came together crazy fast. I think using the larger strips, while it does simplify the design, I don't feel like it really reduces the kind of wow factor of the left side pattern design. For my second layout, I made some adjustments to work with a different size and different amount of photos. And I ended up replacing the large vertical strip on the sketch with a strip of photos. I had this set of 5 3x2 inch photos that I had printed a long time ago, and I think I'd always envisioned using them in a large column just like this. And I think my original thought was probably to use them in kind of a film strip design. I always love that style of photo arrangement with smaller photos. This set of photos were a great stand-in for that vertical strip on the sketch. And together they are the exact same height as that vertical strip. But the strip on the sketch is 1 inch wider than my photos are, so I did have to adjust things a little to make it work. I still wanted the whole design to fit the same space as the sketch with those 1 inch margins around all edges, so I just extended the strips pattern section just an extra inch, and that gave me the exact same square as the hole that the sketch has. I have always loved rainbow designs. It's just an eye-catching color arrangement, and since I have a really hard time picking a favorite color, mostly because I just love them all. So rainbow color combos just really make me so happy. So I cut a variety of different patterns and solid papers in a rainbow of colors. Most of these all came from the same collection. It was the Whatevs collection from American Crafts. And then to arrange them, I did the same method that I showed with the previous layout. And I know this looks like a lot, but this really didn't take a ton of strips to complete this look. So many of these pieces, especially in the top section, came from 1/4 inch strip. So I would adhere one strip and then cut it off, and then use that cutoff piece the next time I needed that strip. And I know this looks like it would maybe take a lot of time, but really it shockingly didn't. I felt like piecing it together went much, much faster than I was expecting. So don't scare yourself away from those 1/4 inch strips. It's really, really not that hard to do. I love the combination of bright rainbow colors with black and white, and I thought since I had adhered the strips on white cardstock, I thought it would be fun to incorporate some black as well. Both black and white are high contrast to the rainbow colors, so utilizing them really makes those colors stand out. I first used a small star punch and punched some stars out of black cardstock, and then I adhered those kind of randomly on the strips. Then, of course, I've got to find a way to add some stitching. So I added a stitch line in the center of each strip with black embroidery floss. Since I no longer had photos arranged like the sketch, I decided to go with an extra large title to kind of take that place and fill in that space. I used a grouping of words and phrases that fit the vibe of the layout and Jackson's little sleepy, sad face in the photos. I also added some rainbow die cuts and arranged those with the words, and all of them are following that rainbow order of colors. I get that you are probably looking at this and saying, but Allison, that doesn't look like this sketch at all. And you are 100% correct. And I'm so glad that this layout went in this direction, because one of the most important lessons I can pass on to you all is that it is totally up to you how much or how little of the sketch you use. There is no right or wrong way to use a sketch. You get to be the boss of your scrapbooking, sketch using world. Sometimes I will look at a sketch and one tiny piece of it ends up being that thing that sparks an idea, and suddenly I'm on a whole different track. Now, I know for some people that veering away from the sketch is hard. And I think so much of that comes from a lack of confidence in your abilities. But you've got to trust me, you need to believe in yourself just a little bit more. Or if you're scared to step out of your comfort zone, you need to drop the fears and push yourself just a little more. Don't be afraid to experiment and try new things. One of my absolute favorite things about using sketches is that they can be a safe space for exploring new things. You can start out small by changing up a few details to fit your own style or wants or needs, and before you know it, you will build that confidence and bravery to explore your own creative ideas. It used to be a common thought that sketches stifle creativity, and that could not be further from the truth. Sketches make it easier to explore creativity because you're going into it with a pre-planned path to assist and guide you. Now, in the beginning with this layout, I thought I could kind of mimic the design of the strips pattern on the one-page sketch and then extend it across both pages. And honestly, I had every intention of creating a similar strips design and thought I could create sections of strips going in all kinds of different directions. So I started off by cutting a large background rectangle out of white cardstock that was going to serve as the base for the strips design. And then I started drawing some lines to break up the background piece into different sections. And it was at this moment that I started kind of straying from the original sketch design. Now, a part of me wanted to just completely stop and kind of rein it in and get back to my original idea, but I absolutely love letting my creative brain kind of take the lead, and I try my best not to stifle that. So I just kind of kept going with the flow. And that is exactly how I took the sketch design as my starting point, and it evolved into what you see on the layout, which is several small sections of angled pieces that all come together to form one large background design. What I love about using sketches is that had I not started with the original sketch design as my inspiration, I don't know if I ever would have come up with this design. And I have to say, I love the way this turned out. So I made sure to film how I made this so that I could show you. And I feel like this method is really great for those times when you want to create a large background design of smaller pieces that need to fit together, kind of like a puzzle. And like I mentioned, I started first with a large rectangle in the size of the background I wanted for my 2-page layout. And then I started drawing some lines. And I wasn't super happy with my first attempt, so I erased those lines and started over. And the second time I started with vertical lines and then added in some horizontal lines kind of going across them. And anytime I make a template piece like this, I like to number the pieces just to make it a little easier to know what goes where, just in case I misplace a piece somewhere. It's also a good way to kind of help you knowing which direction it needs to go. Then I used my paper trimmer to cut out all the lines, and I set the pieces aside, arranged in the correct placement. And then piece by piece, I adhered the template piece on the back side of the cardstock. And I make sure that that numbered side is face down on the back side of the pattern. And then I used my scissors to cut around that shape. And now that piece is ready to go on my layout, and I just continue this until I have all of my pieces covered in pattern paper. And I loved this concept so much that I ended up making 4 new cut files that you can get at Scrapbook Generation that were all inspired by this layout design. There is a square, a circle, a star, and a heart that all have this kind of random sectional line design on the inside. And I'll link to them down below if you want to go grab them. For the rest of the layout, I still kind of followed the sketch. I extended the photos to go across both pages by adding 2 more. I also used slightly larger photos. These were actually 6x4" photos that I cropped down a little to better fit within this background design. Then my title and journaling follow the same placement as the sketch, above and below the photos. And for my embellishments, I kept it super simple with a few flowers and some hearts. The background has so much detail, and I didn't want to take away from that. I had so much fun creating these layouts and using this sketch, and I know that this is going to be one that I'll use again. If you create something with this sketch, be sure to head on over to the Creating with Sketches Facebook group and add your layout to the photo album we have there for this sketch. And if you enjoy using sketches, be sure to check out all of the sketches we have at Scrapbook Generation. I just added a new set of 1-page sketches a few weeks ago, and we've also added a ton of new cut files as well, and I'll link to all of them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.